Stay sideways, treats under, and then you can even scratch if she's feeling up for it. If she doesn't, then I'm just going to give treats, and that's that. Good, and that was a good interaction.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is super
no problem.
helpful. Yeah?
This is easy.
Yeah?
If y'all need me anytime, I'm always here.
Yeah?
Hi, hello, welcome. This video is for people who own dogs that are weary of strangers, and also for people who interact with nervous dogs often. So if your dog is anxious when meeting new people, or if you want to ensure that the nervous dogs that you meet have a positive experience, this video is for you. Dog lovers don't force every dog they meet to love them back. They instead ensure that a stressed out dog does not get stressed out anymore and they have a positive experience when meeting a new person. If you struggle with your dog socializing with new people, this video is going to give you a lot of information and tips on how to ensure that your dog has positive experiences with all the people that they meet. If your dog is extremely nervous about meeting new people and has exhibited behaviors like fear aggression, I would highly recommend visiting a professional in your area. If you're in my area, hit me up. Forewarning, this video is going to be a bit of a Frankenstein because I lost a lot of video and I've reshot some of it to add new things, and then I got busy, and then I didn't get busy and still didn't finish it. But this is really useful stuff, so let's get going. First off, before we get into training and nature and nurture, I want to cover one really ubiquitous concept called social pressure. I need to discuss social pressure because it's super important, hence why I'm covering it first, and I wrote it in a special way even, so appreciate that production value, please. To explain this concept, I like to use my stage analogy. Picture yourself on a stage with a spotlight on you, and you don't know the words to the play that you're in. That would bring out social anxiety in anybody. So when a dog meets a new person that sticks out their hand and encroaches their space and reaches over them and pets them and talks to them, that's a ton of social pressure, equivalent to somebody being on a stage with a spotlight on them. Instead of being on a stage, we need them in the seats watching the play. The absolute lowest level of social pressure that I can apply is meeting a dog outdoor where I don't interact with them. The highest level of social pressure is going to be approaching a dog and hugging and squeezing them. We don't need to start off with the lowest level of social pressure for every single dog. Instead, we need to find their threshold and work from there. Threshold meaning the amount of social pressure that they will outwardly react to. And say that is when somebody reaches over their head, right there. That's what that is. I have a nervous dog, and my dog's threshold is when people put their face right up next to his face. That's when he will react. But he will show stress signals much before, unless they do it very quickly. When your dog shows stress signals, that is when you are going to coach that person how to apply social pressure to your dog. If you are actually meeting this dog and need to interact with them, then you can toss treats to them and just pay no mind to them. Don't look at them, don't talk to them, nothing. So I'm going to ignore this doggy and toss them treats. So I'm When we can tell a really nervous dog is more comfortable with a new person, then we can start to add more social pressure. The next one would be eye contact. Next, you can crouch and toss treats. Then after they're taking treats from your hand, you can scratch them under the chin. Then you can start petting in a more natural type of way. But the last thing that you will add all the way up here is spatial pressure. That is encroaching on a dog, leaning over and petting them over the head. That is a lot of social pressure. And then actually after that would be hugging, but don't hug dogs unless they're totally comfortable with you. It's a very weird position to put a dog in. So to wrap up the concept of social pressure, if you are meeting a nervous dog, don't approach it. Let it approach you. And if it doesn't want to approach you, that's fine. Give it some time, ignore it, toss it some treats, gradually add social pressure. If you own a nervous dog, coach people into adding social pressure if you can tell that your dog is weary of them. Keep those dogs below threshold and gradually increase social pressure. Okay, social pressure, we've got that covered. Next, we're going to talk about trust routines. Routines. Bam, 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 bam. We're done here, we're here. I like to think of these as like a secret handshake of, like, say somebody was in a secret society and they're like, I'm not sure about this new person at this party, and they do the perfect secret handshake with them. They're like, all right, you're in, you're cool. So if you have a nervous dog, it'd be a great idea to teach them a trust routine, which is any type of routine that they like. So it could be going on walks, playing fetch, doing tricks, and even a structured meet and greet routine, which I'll demonstrate later. The easiest one is going on a walk with that new person that they have to meet. Because for one, dogs are already pretty used to going on walks. Two, it gets them out of an enclosed space. So not a lot of dogs are truly territorial. They're just more nervous about being in an enclosed space and not having that flight option. If your dog chooses to walk away from somebody because they're uncomfortable, praise them. That's a good choice. That's the flight option instead of the freeze or fight option. So when they meet a person outside and not in an enclosed space that they are used to not having strangers in, it can take off some of that pressure immediately. While walking with that new person, they can adjust proximity depending on how comfortable the dog is, and you can even do a leash swap where you hand that leash to that person so the dog starts to learn, okay, you give me cool things too, like walks and treats and all that good stuff. So that's a great example of a trust routine, but really anything that takes your dog's mind off of the fact that they're interacting with somebody. This can help take away some of your dog's initial anxiety because you're involved in an activity with them that they're not focused on this new person entirely. It's kind of the difference between if you went on a first date with somebody and you just sat at a dinner table, didn't even eat, and just talked to each other the whole time. That's a lot. That's a lot for some people. It's a lot for most people. So instead, on first dates, you do an activity to take away some of that pressure. So if your nervous dog is meeting somebody new, take them on a date to where your dog is involved in an activity that they actually like and they're not so focused and scared of that new person. Aside from other routines like fetch or tricks and obedience, you can do what's called a meet and greet routine where you teach your dog a certain structure of how they're introduced to a new person. Coaching people to gradually add social pressure could be a form of a meet and greet routine for your dog. Another structured form of a meet and greet routine would be walking your dog in a heel next to that person, having them stay in proximity with that person, and have that person toss treats. Or have your dog go up to that person, take treats, and then do a recall back to you. So it's very structured and controlled, and your dog is focused on the commands that you're giving them rather than interacting fully with that person. Two final pieces on trust routines. One, leave treats outside your door and ask guests to bring them in when they come in. That way, guests always come bearing gifts, like one, treats, and two, toys. If they have a favorite toy, hide it from them and only give it to them when new people arrive, and those new people bring them those toys. So then while that guest is in your home, your dog is preoccupied with their favorite toy that they haven't seen in a bit. That is, of course, a very low level of interaction with that new person, but hey, if that's where your dog's at and that's what they need to have a successful interaction with the person, great, use it. Okay, on to the next one, training and management. Behavior modification involves identifying your dog's triggers and conditioning them to not react to them. Through positive experiences, not going over threshold, they are eventually habituated to those triggers to a point where they're not a big deal anymore to your dog. If your dog's triggers are present, manage this scenario so that your dog still has a good interaction. For example, if your dog is not quite good with other people yet, and the new person that they're meeting is nervous of them, have that person toss a treat and then put your dog away after they get the treat, and that's the end of the interaction. You don't need a dog that's learning how to be comfortable with people meeting an uncomfortable person when neither the dog or the person is ready yet. If they must interact, use these tools. Another example of management is coaching the people around your dog to not do things that might trigger them, like, hey, please don't put your face up next to my dog, just toss him treats and pet him under the chin. Managing. You're a manager. Additionally, you can use training commands to manage your dog. For example, if I can tell my dog is uncomfortable with a person, I can send my dog to his place bed or ask them to leave it. Therefore, managing my dog. So all this right here is nurture. I can totally see myself as like the boring high school teacher that's way too excited about nature versus nurture. But class, let me tell you, it is not nature versus nurture. It's nature and nurture, because both of them are just as important. Actually, nature might be more important. Actually, nurture might be more important. I'm not really sure, because it's both, and it will always be both. So, argument settled, I think, maybe. Dog training is nurturing. Basically, anything that comes after the birth of the dog is nurturing. So nurturing is crucial because it's all we can do after the dog is born. But we often forget a dog's nature. Usually because we anthropomorphize them to an extent that, that's my baby, that's my human baby. There are different species that we have selectively bred to be our companions, but they are still a different species. Oftentimes we get too focused on making sure that this dog can live in our world in the right way, in our way. And that can be unnatural for some dogs. Not every dog likes crowded streets. Not every dog likes meeting new people, going to dog parks, etc. So number one, treat them like a dog. Don't treat them as a human or like a baby. And number two, account for their personality. Some coworkers of mine shared an excellent podcast called Training Without Conflict. You can find it on any podcast platform. But it is hosted by one of the best dog trainers out there, Ivan Balabanov. And one podcast that he did with two evolutionary psychologists was amazing. Blew my mind. Because as a dog trainer, I'm always focused on nurturing. I'm always focused on how do I fix this problem. And a lot of dog owners think the same way. For me, I even start to feel like imposter syndrome if I can't fix a dog. But I've come to learn over time that we need to account for the dog's personality. We can determine dogs' personalities and temperaments the same way that we determine a human. For example, the big 5 personality traits can be applied to a dog. Usually, nervous dogs are high in neuroticism and not very agreeable with going outside their typical routine. So if a human was low in the trait of extroversion, they wouldn't like going to clubs or crowded spaces. Same with a dog. They don't have to meet every single person and be totally fine with it. Just like if your cat ran into the laundry room when you had guests, you wouldn't take it out and force it to interact with them. And maybe your dog's nature is to be nervous about new people. If that is the case, use these strategies to keep your dog and other people safe. But with all the best training in the world, some dogs are never going to become that social, easygoing dog. If that is the case, do what you can to help your dog, but also take a positive psychology approach and find out what your dog is good at and lean into those things, rather than pushing them to do things that they don't want to do. Put in the time and effort to help them be less weary of strangers, but be equally, if not more, mindful of your dog's social temperament. So if you're meeting a nervous dog, first off, listen to the owner. They probably already have a strategy of how to deal with it, but be aware of how to add social pressure. If you own the nervous dog, coach people into how to add social pressure, teach your dog's trust routines, ensure their obedience is on point and not selective obedience, and manage their environment so that they don't go over threshold. Therefore, they have continued good experiences with new people. If your dog is extremely weary of people, I would recommend finding a professional and working along with them. I hope that this video was helpful for other dog owners that have nervous dogs, and for dog lovers that want to interact with nervous dogs. And that's a wrap. Have fun training your dog.